"You are no longer a Whitmore," her father said without raising his voice, and somehow that hurt more than anger ever could. The words settled over the boardroom like winter dust, quiet, cold, impossible to sweep away. Claire Whitmore stood at the end of the polished walnut table with one hand resting lightly over her stomach. The skyline of downtown Chicago glowed behind the glass walls, all silver towers and evening lights. But inside the room, everything felt smaller, tighter, as if the air itself had stepped back from her. Her younger brother, Nathan, adjusted his tie without looking at her. Two board members lowered their eyes. One woman pretended to read a report she had already finished 10 minutes earlier. No one defended her. No one moved. Claire swallowed carefully. She was 34 years old, Chief Executive Officer of Whitmore Biotech, the woman financial magazines called America's youngest healthcare visionary. And yet in that moment, she felt like a girl standing in her father's study again, waiting to be told she had disappointed him. "I built half this company," she said quietly. "You did," Charles Whitmore replied. "And now you've put it at risk." His voice stayed calm, almost gentle. "That made it worse. The press will find out," Nathan added softly. "Investors are already nervous." Claire turned toward him. "You mean they're nervous because you made sure they were?" Nathan said nothing. Outside, snow drifted past the windows in thin white lines. Somewhere below, a siren echoed through downtown traffic. Inside the room, only the faint hum of fluorescent lights remained. Claire looked around once more. Mahogany walls, framed awards, the gold company seal mounted behind her father's chair. She had spent 12 years earning her place here. 12 years of 14-hour days, red-eye flights, missed birthdays, empty apartments, and coffee gone cold beside glowing screens. And now all of it was slipping away in silence. Her father slid a folder across the table. "Effective immediately," he said. "You are removed as acting CEO, pending restructuring." Claire stared at the paper but did not touch it. "And my shares?" she asked. "Placed into trust." "Review." She closed her eyes for 1 second. Just one. Enough to breathe. Enough not to break. "Where am I supposed to go?" The room stayed quiet. Nathan looked away. Her father folded his hands. "You'll figure it out. You always do." 20 minutes later, Claire stepped into the freezing Chicago night, carrying one suitcase and a leather coat she had forgotten she was still wearing. Snow gathered on her shoulders. Her driver had already left. Her phone vibrated with alerts from reporters. Headlines were forming before the truth even had a name. She reached her black sedan parked beneath the street lamp, climbed inside, and gripped the steering wheel with shaking fingers. The baby shifted gently beneath her hand. "It's okay," she whispered, though she wasn't sure who she was comforting anymore. The engine started once, coughed, then died. Claire tried again. Nothing. Wind pushed snow across the windshield. Downtown lights blurred into white haze. For the first time in years, Claire Whitmore had nowhere to go. And 3 miles away, in a quiet apartment complex on the south side, a single father finishing his janitor shift had no idea destiny was already driving toward his door. The snow kept falling long after the city lights disappeared behind her. Claire sat inside the silent sedan with both hands wrapped around the steering wheel while her phone continued to vibrate on the passenger seat. News alerts. Messages from board members. 3 calls from Nathan. 1 from her father. She turned the phone face down. The baby shifted again, softer this time, like a reminder that she was not alone even when the world felt empty. She tried the engine once more. Nothing. The dashboard flickered and went dark. A slow breath left her lips. Outside, the temperature had already dropped below 20 degrees. Snow gathered along the edges of the windshield and blurred the street into white shadows. Claire looked out at the unfamiliar neighborhood around her. Small apartment buildings. Brick walls weathered by years of winter. Laundry lights glowing through curtains. Ordinary lives continuing while hers seemed to have stopped. Across the street, a maintenance truck pulled into a narrow lot behind one of the buildings. A man stepped out carrying a lunchbox and a janitor cart folded neatly in the truck bed. Ethan Brooks rubbed his hands together against the cold and glanced up at the sky. 12 hours at the technology campus had left his shoulders stiff, but home was only a few steps away now. Inside apartment 14, his daughter Lucy was probably still awake, pretending not to wait for him. He smiled at the thought. Then he saw the car. Black sedan. Engine off. Driver still inside. He hesitated. Snow brushed across his boots as he walked closer. The woman behind the wheel looked composed, even in exhaustion. Expensive coat. Tired eyes. One hand resting protectively over her stomach. Ethan knocked gently on the window. Claire startled slightly before lowering it halfway. Cold air rushed between them. "Ma'am, are you all right?" he asked quietly. Claire opened her mouth, but nothing came out at first. It had been years since anyone asked that question without wanting something in return. "My car died," she finally said. "I think the battery is gone." Ethan nodded once. "You have someone coming?" She looked away toward the snow-covered street. No, the silence settled between them. Not awkward, just honest. Ethan glanced at the thick snow building around the tires. "You should not stay here tonight." Claire stiffened immediately. "I am fine." "Maybe," he said gently. "But your car is not, and winter in Chicago likes to win arguments." For the first time that night, the corner of Claire's mouth moved. Not quite a smile, just surprise. A warm yellow light suddenly flicked on from the second-floor window above them. Small hands pressed against the glass. Then the window opened. "Daddy," Lucy called softly into the night, wrapped in an oversized sweater. "Are you coming up?" Her eyes landed on Claire. The little girl disappeared from the window. Seconds later, the apartment door opened, and Lucy hurried down the steps carrying a folded blue blanket nearly as big as she was. She stopped in front of Claire without fear. "You look cold," she said simply. Claire stared at the child. The blanket smelled faintly of detergent and cinnamon. Something inside her chest shifted painfully. She had sat in boardrooms worth billions. She had shaken hands with governors and investors. Yet kindness had found her here beneath a street lamp outside an old apartment building. Lucy looked up at her again. "Daddy," she whispered, tugging Ethan's sleeve. "She is trying really hard not to cry." Claire lowered her eyes the moment Lucy spoke because children had a way of seeing truths adults spent years hiding. Snow rested on the little girl's blonde hair like tiny stars while she held out the blue blanket with both hands. Claire accepted it slowly. The fabric felt warm, real, human, not polished boardrooms or carefully rehearsed sympathy, just kindness. Ethan looked toward the darkening sky. The wind had picked up again. "There is a diner 2 blocks away," he said quietly. "You can wait there until a tow truck comes, or you can have coffee upstairs while we figure this out." Claire should have said no. Every lesson she had ever learned told her to protect distance, protect image, protect control. But those lessons had left her alone in a car with nowhere to go. Lucy reached for her hand without hesitation. "We have tomato soup," she announced proudly, "and crackers shaped like stars." Ethan gave an apologetic smile. "Apparently, that is our strongest argument tonight." 10 minutes later, Claire stepped into apartment 14, carrying nothing except her purse and the blue blanket still draped over her shoulders. The space was small but warm. Old hardwood floors. A worn couch covered with a handmade quilt. Family drawings taped neatly beside the refrigerator. The scent of soup and cinnamon floated through the air. Somewhere near the window sat a tiny artificial Christmas tree decorated with paper ornaments colored by a child's hand. Claire stood quietly in the doorway. She had lived in a penthouse overlooking Lake Michigan. Marble counters, private elevators, floor-to-ceiling glass. Yet none of those places had ever felt this alive. Lucy hurried into the kitchen. "Daddy, can we use the good bowls?" Ethan laughed softly while hanging his coat. "We only own good bowls." "Exactly," Lucy said with complete seriousness. Claire sat carefully at the table as Ethan placed a steaming bowl in front of her. Tomato soup. Crackers shaped like stars floating on top. The baby shifted again. Her hand moved instinctively to her stomach. Ethan noticed, but said nothing. He simply poured tea into a chipped ceramic mug. "You do not have to tell us anything tonight," he said. "Not your story. Not your name if you do not want to." Claire looked up. "Claire," she answered after a pause. "My name is Claire." Lucy smiled immediately. "I am Lucy. I am 8 3/4. Daddy says the 3/4 still counts." "It absolutely counts," Claire whispered. Ethan sat across from them. His work shirt still carried faint streaks of cleaning solution from the technology campus. His hands looked rough from years of work, but there was steadiness in him, quiet strength, the kind that did not ask to be noticed. Claire watched him help Lucy straighten a crooked ornament hanging from the little tree. "Mom used to put that one there," Lucy said softly. Ethan nodded once. The room grew still. Claire lowered her spoon. "I am sorry. It has been 4 years," Ethan replied gently. "Some days are easier." Snow tapped lightly against the windows. The heater clicked on again. For the first time since leaving the boardroom, Claire felt something dangerous beginning to return. Not confidence, not control, something smaller, something she had almost forgotten existed. Peace. Then her phone lit up on the table. Unknown number. She ignored it. A second message appeared immediately after. We know where you were tonight. Claire's fingers froze. Across from her, Ethan noticed the color leave her face. The warmth in the room suddenly felt very far away. Claire turned the phone face down so quickly that the tea in her cup trembled. Lucy did not notice. She was busy arranging star crackers into tiny constellations on her napkin. Ethan noticed everything and asked nothing. That, somehow, made it harder. The heater hummed softly through the apartment. Snow drifted past the kitchen window in silver lines under the parking lot lights. Claire wrapped both hands around the ceramic mug. It was chipped near the handle. Imperfect. Ordinary. Precious. She had spent years surrounded by things that cost more than this entire apartment, and none of them had ever felt as steady. You do not have to stay awake worrying, Ethan said quietly as he rinsed dishes in the sink. My couch folds out. Lucy already decided you are family for tonight. I did, Lucy confirmed immediately. Temporary family still counts. Claire looked down before either of them could see the shine gathering in her eyes. Thank you, she whispered. Later that night, Lucy finally drifted off beneath the little Christmas tree with a coloring book still open in her lap. Ethan carried her gently to her room. Claire stood near the window alone. The city looked different from here. No towers, no penthouses, just old brick buildings, snow-covered cars, and warm rectangles of light where people lived ordinary lives. Her phone lit up again. This time there were 3 messages. Reporters are asking questions. Call your father. Where are you, Claire? She closed the screen without answering. Bad news. Ethan's voice came quietly from behind her. Claire turned. He had changed into a gray sweater. Tired eyes. Kind face. The sort of man people walked past without noticing. She wondered how many stories silence could hide. My life became complicated today, she said carefully. Ethan nodded as if that answer made perfect sense. Mine did once too. Claire looked at him. What happened? He leaned lightly against the kitchen counter. My wife got sick. After she passed, everything changed. I had engineering offers in Seattle, Boston, even Dallas. Good jobs. Big salaries. Claire blinked. Engineering. Ethan gave a small smile. Surprised? She was. More than she wanted to admit. I chose Chicago because Lucy needed home more than I needed ambition. The room went quiet again. Claire stared at him. Janitor. Single father. Former engineer. Nothing fit the picture she had built in her mind. Do you ever regret it? She asked softly. Ethan looked toward Lucy's closed bedroom door. Not once. Something inside Claire ached. Because she had done the opposite. She had chosen work. Meetings. Growth charts. Expansion plans. She had built an empire. And lost everyone along the way. The baby moved suddenly. Stronger this time. Claire pressed a hand to her stomach. Ethan noticed. How far along? He asked gently. 7 months. He nodded. No judgment. No curiosity sharpened into gossip. Just respect. That little one picked a brave mother. Claire almost laughed at the irony. Brave. She had stood before investors worth billions without shaking. Tonight she was afraid of opening her own messages. A soft knock interrupted the silence. Both of them froze. Not loud. Just once. Then again. Claire felt the color drain from her face. Ethan walked toward the door, but did not open it immediately. Through the frosted glass, they could see only a shadow and the outline of a camera lens reflecting the hallway light. Somewhere downstairs a car door shut. Then another. Claire whispered so quietly it barely existed. They found me. The apartment seemed to hold its breath. The knock came again, soft but certain. Lucy stirred in the hallway, rubbing sleep from her eyes. Ethan turned immediately. Back to bed, kiddo, he said gently. Everything is okay. Lucy looked from him to Claire and nodded, even though she clearly knew it was not. She disappeared down the hall, clutching her stuffed rabbit. Ethan stepped toward the door and glanced through the narrow strip of frosted glass. A man stood outside in a dark winter coat, holding a camera. Another waited near the stairwell with a phone pressed to his ear. Ethan exhaled slowly. Not anger. Not fear. Just calculation. He opened the door halfway. Can I help you? The man smiled too quickly. We are looking for Claire Whitmore. We have reason to believe she is here. Ethan kept one hand on the door. You have the wrong apartment. Sir, this is a public interest story. It is also midnight. The reporter hesitated. Ethan's voice never rose. There is a child sleeping inside. Good night. He closed the door softly. No slam. No drama. Just final. Claire had been standing motionless beside the window the entire time. You did not even ask if it was true, she whispered. Ethan looked at her. You said your life became complicated. I believed you. The words landed somewhere deep. Inside her, respect without conditions. She had forgotten what that sounded like. Outside, car engine started. Headlights moved across the snow and slowly disappeared. The hallway fell quiet again. Claire finally sat down at the kitchen table. Her shoulders seemed smaller now, the weight of the day pressing through every careful layer she had built around herself. Ethan poured fresh tea. Steam rose between them. You do not have to explain tonight, he said. But you probably should sleep. Claire stared into the cup. They will come back. Maybe. My family too. Ethan nodded. Maybe them as well. She let out a tired laugh. You say maybe a lot. He smiled faintly. Life likes surprises. Silence returned. Warm silence this time. The kind that did not demand words. Claire finally spoke without looking up. I used to think if I worked hard enough I could keep everyone safe. Ethan rested his elbows lightly on the table. And now, her hand moved over her stomach again. Now I cannot even keep myself hidden. Ethan was quiet for a moment. Then he stood and walked toward an old bookshelf near the living room. He pulled out a worn notebook and placed it in front of her. Inside were pages filled with hand sketches, mechanical drawings, small inventions, notes written in precise pencil lines, conveyor systems, robotic arms, efficiency calculations. Claire's eyes widened. These are yours. Ethan nodded. Old ideas. She turned another page. Then another. The work was good. More than good. Elegant. Thoughtful. The sort of designs companies paid fortunes to create. Why are you cleaning floors? She asked softly. Ethan looked toward Lucy's room. Because dreams can wait. Children cannot. Claire lowered her eyes. Something warm and painful moved through her chest again. At that exact moment, the baby kicked hard enough for her to inhale sharply. Ethan noticed immediately. Everything okay? Claire slowly placed his hand over the side of her coat before she could stop herself. The room went still. A tiny movement answered beneath his palm. Ethan froze. Lucy appeared at the hallway corner in her pajamas and smiled sleepily. See, she whispered. The baby likes. Daddy. Silence fell across the room. Even the heater seemed to stop. Morning arrived quietly, the way grace often does. Pale winter light slipped through the kitchen curtains and settled across the little apartment in soft gold lines. Claire woke on the fold-out couch beneath the blue blanket Lucy had given her. For a moment she forgot everything. The boardroom, the messages, the reporters. Then reality returned, but somehow it hurt less here. The apartment smelled like coffee and toasted bread. Somewhere in the kitchen a pan clicked gently against the stove. Claire sat up slowly. Lucy was already at the table wearing fuzzy socks with snowflakes on them and carefully drawing stars on a sheet of paper. Ethan stood at the counter flipping pancakes with the same calm focus he seemed to bring to everything. Good morning, Lucy announced brightly. You slept through my masterpiece. Claire blinked. Masterpiece. Lucy held up the drawing. 3 stick figures stood beside a fourth smaller one wrapped in a blanket. Above them she had written in crooked letters, Winter Family. Claire looked at it longer than she meant to. Ethan set a plate down in front of her. Blueberry pancakes. They solve most problems around here. Only medium problems, Lucy corrected. Big problems need cinnamon. Claire smiled before she could stop herself. It felt strange on her face. Almost unfamiliar. Her phone remained silent on the table. No messages. No alerts. Just stillness. She had not known silence could feel kind. After breakfast, Ethan left briefly to check her car with jumper cables borrowed from a neighbor. Claire stayed inside helping Lucy clean dishes. Daddy fixes everything, Lucy said proudly while stacking plates. Except the washing machine. That thing fights dirty. Claire laughed softly. Lucy looked up immediately. You should do that more. What? Laugh. The little girl shrugged. You look less lonely. The words landed gently, but they stayed. Claire turned toward the window before answering. Outside, Ethan stood in the snow beside her sedan, sleeves rolled up despite the cold. He moved carefully, methodically, like a man used to solving quiet problems. Her eyes drifted to the notebook still resting on the shelf from last night. Curiosity pulled her toward it again. She opened to the middle pages this time. Technical sketches became patents. Patent numbers became prototype notes. Then she froze. One design caught her breath. Autonomous medical sorting system. Early development concept. Creator, Ethan Brooks. Claire stared. Whitmore Biotech had built an entire logistics division around technology that looked painfully similar. Her pulse quickened. She flipped pages faster. Dates. Calculations. Revision notes. Everything years old. Older than the project launch she remembered presenting to investors. The room seemed to tilt. "Miss Claire?" Lucy asked softly. Claire looked up slowly. "Did your daddy ever work with hospitals?" Lucy nodded. "A long time ago. Mom used to say Daddy built things that helped people even when nobody knew." Claire lowered her eyes back to the page. Her company. Her empire. Somewhere inside it sat pieces of a man who now cleaned office floors at night and made blueberry pancakes in the morning. The apartment door opened. Cold air swept inside with Ethan. Snow rested on his shoulders. "Good news," he said with a faint smile. "Your car started." Claire stood holding the notebook against her chest. "Ethan," she asked quietly, "have you ever heard of Whitmore Biotech?" Ethan stopped moving. Just for a second. Barely long enough to notice. But she saw it. And for the first time since meeting him, the silence in his eyes carried history. The room stayed quiet after Claire asked the question. Snow tapped lightly against the kitchen window. Somewhere outside, a plow moved down the street with a slow metallic scrape. Ethan set his gloves on the counter and brushed melted snow from his sleeves before answering. "I know the company," he said calmly. "Most people in Chicago do." Claire held the notebook tighter. "That is not what I meant." Ethan looked at the pages in her hands. Recognition passed through his eyes, gentle and tired. Not surprise. More like an old memory walking back through the door. Lucy sensed the shift immediately. She gathered her crayons without speaking and slipped toward her room. The apartment seemed larger once she was gone. Claire opened to the patent page again. "These designs," she said quietly. "My company built systems almost identical to them." Ethan pulled out a chair and sat down. "I know." Claire stared at him. "You know?" He nodded once. "I submitted prototypes years ago through a medical technology contractor. The project disappeared. A year later, something similar launched under a different division." Claire felt her pulse in her throat. "Why did you never fight it?" Ethan smiled faintly. "My wife had already started treatment. Lawyers cost money. Hospitals cost more." The words landed softly, but they carried weight. Claire lowered her eyes. For years she had stood on stages speaking about innovation, about improving lives, about ethical leadership. Suddenly, every award on her office wall felt heavier. "I did not know," she whispered. Ethan looked toward Lucy's closed door. "I believe you." That hurt more than blame would have. Because forgiveness spoken that easily felt undeserved. Claire sat slowly across from him. "What was her name?" she asked. A small smile touched his face. "Emily." The room warmed somehow when he said it. "She loved old bookstores and terrible coffee." Claire smiled faintly. Terrible coffee. The worse it tasted, the more she trusted it. They both laughed quietly. The sound surprised them. Then Ethan reached for the notebook and turned to the last page. There was no design there. Only a folded photograph. Claire opened it carefully. Ethan stood younger, wearing a white lab coat beside a woman with bright eyes holding a little blonde toddler between them. Lucy. On the back, Emily had written in blue ink, "Build things that matter, even if nobody notices." Claire swallowed hard. Her phone lit up on the table. This time it was not a reporter. It was a board alert. Emergency shareholder meeting. Interim appointment confirmed. Nathan Whitmore named acting chief executive officer. Her breath caught. Ethan noticed the screen. Bad news again? Claire shook her head slowly. No, she looked at him. This time it is truth. He waited. Claire placed the notebook gently on the table. My family removed me. Yesterday. Silence. I was the chief executive officer of Whitmore Biotech. The heater clicked off. Even the apartment seemed to pause. Ethan did not move. Did not speak. Lucy appeared at the hallway entrance holding her rabbit. Is Miss Claire famous? Claire almost laughed through the ache in her chest. Ethan finally answered before she could. No, he said softly. I think she is just someone who got lost. Claire looked at him. Outside, the snow kept falling over the city. Inside, something else had begun to fall too. The distance between who they were and who they thought the other had been. Lucy accepted Ethan's answer without another question because children often understood what adults complicated. She walked back toward her room, hugging the rabbit beneath one arm, and paused only once. "People get lost," she said softly. "That is why homes exist." Then she disappeared down the hallway. Silence settled over the apartment again. Claire sat very still at the kitchen table. Chief Executive Officer. The title sounded strange now. Heavy, distant, like a coat that no longer fit. Ethan poured fresh coffee into 2 mugs and pushed one toward her. "You should probably call someone," he said gently. Claire shook her head. Everyone who mattered already made their choice. Ethan did not answer immediately. He looked toward the little paper ornaments hanging near the window. "Sometimes people choose fear first," he said quietly. "It does not always mean they stop loving you." Claire almost smiled at that. "You do not know my family." "No," Ethan admitted. "But I know regret." The word lingered. Claire looked at him. "Do you regret leaving engineering?" He glanced toward Emily's photograph still resting on the table. "Never leaving. Only what I could not save." Her eyes softened. Before she could speak, her phone rang again. This time a name appeared. Charles Whitmore. Her father. The room seemed colder. Claire stared at the screen until it almost stopped ringing. Then she answered. "Claire." His voice was controlled as always. "Where are you?" She looked around the apartment. The paper tree. The chipped mugs. Lucy's crayons scattered across the table. Ethan quietly. Washing dishes as if the world had not shifted around them. "Somewhere peaceful," she said. Silence on the other end. "The board meets tomorrow morning." "I know. Nathan has accepted the position." Claire closed her eyes. "I know that too." Her father exhaled slowly. "Come home." The words hit harder than she expected. "Home," she whispered. "You removed me from the company. You removed me from the family." "Claire." His voice cracked just enough to sound human again. "You are still my daughter." Tears rose before she could stop them. "Then why did you let me leave?" Silence. Long silence. Finally he spoke. "Because I was afraid." The line went quiet again. Claire looked down at her hand resting over her stomach. Fear. Maybe that was all any of them had been carrying. She ended the call gently. No anger. Just exhaustion. Ethan placed a folded dish towel aside. "You okay?" Claire nodded, but the tears arrived anyway. She turned away immediately. Ethan did not move closer. Did not offer speeches. He simply stood there, giving her dignity inside her grief. The baby shifted again. Strong. Steady. Claire smiled through tears. "You know what is strange?" she asked softly. Ethan waited. "Yesterday I had a penthouse, drivers, assistants, board votes." She looked around the little apartment. "Today I have pancakes, crayons, and a man who cleans buildings at night." Ethan smiled faintly. "Sounds like an upgrade." She laughed. Real laughter this time. Then her eyes landed on the television mounted near the shelf. Breaking news flashed across the screen. Whitmore Biotech announces new automation expansion. Behind the headline appeared images of design renderings. Claire stopped breathing. Ethan turned toward the screen slowly. The models were unmistakable. Conveyor paths, sorting grids, mechanical layouts. His layouts. The room fell silent. Lucy stepped out again holding her rabbit and looked at the television. "Daddy," she whispered. "That looks like your notebook." The apartment went completely still after Lucy spoke. The television continued playing cheerful corporate music beneath images of polished laboratories and bright white hallways, but nobody listened anymore. Ethan stood near the sink with one hand resting against the counter. Claire watched the screen again. The sorting lanes, the automated trays, the motion paths, they were his. Not similar. His. Lucy looked between them with the quiet concern children carried when adults forgot how to hide sadness. "Daddy?" she asked softly. Ethan reached for the remote and turned the television off. The room exhaled into silence. "Breakfast tomorrow still needs pancakes," he said gently. That part of life did not change. Claire stared at him. No anger. No bitterness. No demand. Just dignity. It almost broke her heart. She stood slowly and picked up the notebook from the table. "You should fight this." Ethan smiled faintly. "Fight who?" "Them." Her voice grew steadier. "My family. The board. Everyone who took this." Ethan looked toward Emily's photograph. "I spent years teaching myself how to let go." Claire stepped closer. "And maybe I spent years learning how not to." Snow drifted outside again, soft and endless beyond the window glass. Ethan finally sat down at the table. Claire opened the notebook to the first patent page. Tomorrow there is a shareholder meeting. He looked up. Claire, listen to me. Her eyes shone now, but her voice did not shake. You built systems that helped hospitals. You lost them because life demanded more from you. That does not mean they stopped being yours. Lucy climbed into the chair beside Ethan and slipped her small hand into his. Mom used to say good things come back, she whispered. Ethan closed his eyes for a second. Emily, the notebook, the little apartment, the daughter who still believed in miracles. When he opened them again, something had changed. Not anger. Resolve. Quiet and steady like winter light. Claire felt it too. Her phone vibrated once more. A message from her father. Come tomorrow. Please. She read it twice. Then set the phone down. I am going, she said. Ethan nodded slowly. Okay. You are coming with me. He blinked. Claire. No, she smiled through tears. You gave shelter to a stranger in the snow. You trusted me before you knew my name. Tomorrow someone should trust you too. Silence filled the room again. The kind that carried weight. Lucy suddenly stood and walked toward Claire. She wrapped both arms carefully around her waist and rested her cheek against the side of her coat. Claire froze. What is this for? She whispered. Lucy smiled. Temporary family upgrade. Claire laughed softly through tears. Ethan looked away for a moment, toward the window where snow covered the old parking lot and softened every hard edge the city had. He had spent years believing his story ended in small rooms and night shifts. Maybe dignity had simply been waiting. Claire rested one hand over Lucy's hair and the other over the child growing inside her. Two hearts beneath one roof. One family built by loss. Another beginning in silence. Outside, winter covered Chicago in white. Inside apartment 14, nobody spoke for several seconds. Not because there was nothing left to say. Because for the first time in a very long while, hope had entered the room quietly enough that everyone was afraid to disturb it.